May 17, 2026. Inside the Grand Hall of the People in Beijing, the air was thick with the kind of silence that only precedes a tectonic shift in the global order. Beneath the towering portraits and the heavy red banners, two men sat face to face. Just 24 hours earlier, their respective navies had been locked in a deadly 300-minute standoff in the Strait of Hormuz, a confrontation that pushed the world's two largest nuclear powers to the very edge of direct kinetic conflict. But as President Donald Trump and Chairman Xi Jinping reached across the table to shake hands, the fog of war in the Persian Gulf was suddenly replaced by a strategic earthquake. I am Dr. Helen R. Baer. If you are joining us for this briefing, you are looking for the truth beneath the headlines. What happened in Beijing today was not just a diplomatic summit, it was a flip. For decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran has relied on a single, unshakable assumption that China would always be its economic lung and its diplomatic shield. Today, that assumption died. In the next 40 minutes, I am going to walk you through the uncensored reality of this summit. We will analyze the $10 billion a month oil deal that just turned America into China's new energy partner. We will look at the joint statement that effectively signed the death warrant for Iran's nuclear ambitions. We will go inside the Martyr Commander military exercise launched by a panicked IRGC just hours ago. And most importantly, I will show you how this great power bargain is already being felt in the bank accounts of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the security architectures of the Middle East. If you value deep dive intelligence over mainstream noise, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications now. We are entering a 48 to 72-hour window that will determine the fate of the Strait of Hormuz and the future of the global balance of power. The game has changed, and it has changed faster than anyone in Tehran ever predicted. Stay with me. The picture is now crystal clear, and it is far more serious than the mainstream media has even begun to grasp. To understand the magnitude of what just occurred, we must look at the gifts exchanged in the Grand Hall. Diplomacy at this level is never about goodwill, it is about leverage. Chairman Xi Jinping is a pragmatist. He watched the 300-minute naval confrontation on May 13th and realized that a direct war with the United States in the Strait of Hormuz would destroy the very thing China needs to survive: stable energy flows. So he chose a different path. He chose to flip. The first pillar of the deal: aviation. China committed to purchasing 200 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. This is a massive injection of capital into the American industrial base, but for Beijing, it is a necessity. Their domestic market is hungry, and they are choosing to tie their logistics future to American hardware. The second pillar, and the one that sent shockwaves through Tehran, is energy. China has agreed to purchase 600,000 barrels of American crude oil per day. This is a $10 billion per month commitment. Let that number sink in. This isn't just a purchase, it is a replacement strategy. China is signaling to the world that they no longer need to rely on discounted, gray market Iranian oil to fuel their economy. They have found a cleaner, more stable partner in Washington and the Gulf allies. But the real surgical strike came in the joint statement. For the first time in the modern era, the U.S. and China spoke with a single voice on two red lines. 1. Iran must never possess a nuclear weapon. 2. The Strait of Hormuz must remain fully open for global trade without interference. By signing this, Beijing has officially stripped Iran of its superpower shield. For years, Iran believed they could harass tankers and spin centrifuges because China would veto any real consequences at the UN. That protection is gone. Beijing has effectively told Tehran, "You are on your own." This is the great power pivot. China imports 11.6 million barrels of oil a day. They have a 1.4 billion barrel strategic reserve. They have the bandwidth to squeeze Iran without hurting their own domestic economy. The message from Beijing to the IRGC is unmistakable. Your disruption is now a threat to our interests, and we have decided to side with the customer, not the supplier. Let's look at the nerves and bones of this economic squeeze. Why is a 600,000-barrel deal with America more dangerous to Iran than a B-2 bomber? Iran's survival depends on a single customer, China. They currently ship approximately 1.6 million barrels per day to Beijing. Because of Western sanctions, Iran has to sell this oil at a desperation discount, usually $8 to $10 below the global Brent benchmark. For the IRGC, this 1.6 million barrels is the lifeblood. It is the hard currency they use to pay the salaries of their 150,000 active duty guardsmen. It is the money that funds Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Shia militias in Iraq. If China replaces even 500,000 of those barrels with American or Saudi crude, Iran's revenue drops by nearly 1/3 overnight. But it's worse than just lost cash. It's about infrastructure decay. As I discussed in our previous briefing on the port blockade, oil fields are geological systems. If China stops buying and Iran's storage tanks overflow, they have to shut in their wells. In aging fields like those in Iran, shutting in a well can cause permanent reservoir damage. You cannot just turn the oil back on later. You are physically destroying your future capacity. Beijing knows this. They are executing a slow-motion economic strangulation. They aren't cutting Iran off all at once. That would be too disruptive. Instead, they are performing a surgical replacement. Think about the psychology of the IRGC commander. He is looking at a world where his only friend just signed a deal with his greatest enemy. He is looking at a bank account that is about to hit zero, and he knows that if he cannot pay his soldiers, the revolutionary part of the Revolutionary Guard will disappear. This is economic warfare of the highest order. It is quiet, it is precise, and it is devastating. It targets the wallet of the regime rather than the walls. And as we are about to see, the IRGC's response was not a diplomatic counteroffer. It was a desperate, fiery display of military theater known as Martyr Commander. Just hours after the Trump-Xi handshake, the IRGC launched its response. They named it Martyr Commander. The Strait of Hormuz was suddenly filled with the roar of fast attack boats and the high-pitched whine of Shahed-type drones. State media in Tehran broadcast footage of swarm tactics, hundreds of speedboats moving in formation, test-firing anti-ship missiles into the Persian Gulf. To the casual viewer, this looks like a show of strength. To a military analyst, it looks like a cry for help. Why launch a massive 5-day exercise now? The timing reveals 3 things. 1. Internal morale. The IRGC commanders are terrified that their rank and file will see the Beijing summit as a total abandonment. They need to show their soldiers that they are still the lions of the Gulf. 2. Domestic distraction. With inflation skyrocketing and fuel shortages hitting Tehran, the regime needs a foreign conspiracy to blame. The exercise is a tool to silence the growing dissent on the Iranian streets. 3. The threat of chaos. The IRGC is sending a message to Beijing. If you stop buying our oil, we will make sure no one's oil moves through this strait. But here is the surgical reality. The Martyr Commander exercise is expensive. Fueling those boats, launching those drones, and mobilizing those thousands of troops costs millions of dollars, money the IRGC is currently losing. They are burning their remaining cash to put on a light show. The name Martyr Commander is a direct reference to the fallen leaders of the IRGC, specifically Qasem Soleimani. It is designed to invoke the idea of sacrifice. But you only talk about sacrifice when you can no longer provide victory. While the IRGC speedboats are swarming in the Gulf, the U.S. Navy and the planned Chinese Navy are watching from a distance with a new, shared understanding. For the first time, the asymmetric threat from Iran is no longer just America's problem. It is now an inconvenience to China's new energy partnership. The IRGC is doubling down on confrontation because conflict is the only environment in which they can justify their existence. But as we go deeper into the shadow state of Iran, we find that the men running these drills are no longer just soldiers. They are the owners of the country. Who is truly in control of Iran in 2026? It is no longer a clerical theocracy in the traditional sense. It is a military mafia. At the center of this web stands Ahmad Vahidi, the IRGC commander who has effectively seized the reins of the Iranian state. In recent weeks, Vahidi has performed a slow-motion coup. He has blocked the Iranian president from appointing moderate cabinet members. He has centralized all diplomatic and military communication under his personal office. The IRGC now controls approximately 40% of Iran's entire economy. They own the ports, the telecommunications, the construction conglomerates, and the smuggling routes. They are not just defending the revolution. They are the revolution's bank account. This is why the China flip is so existential for them. The IRGC businessman generals don't care about ideology as much as they care about flow. They need the oil to flow to China so the cash can flow into their shadow banks. If peace were to break out, if the strait was fully opened and the nuclear program was dismantled, the IRGC would lose its excuse for holding emergency powers. The Iranian people would start asking, why do we have a military organization running our cell phone networks while we can't afford bread? The IRGC needs the crisis. They need the martyr commander drills. They need the satanic West and the traitorous East to justify their iron grip. Vahidi and his inner circle are cornered. They are watching their primary customer, China, side with their primary enemy, Trump. This concentration of power creates a feedback loop of paranoia. The more they feel isolated, the more they will lash out. And as we look at the three levers China now holds, we can see exactly where the next fracture will occur. Beijing has moved from being a passive buyer to an active player. They now hold three specific levers that could end the IRGC's dominance without a single American missile being fired. Lever 1, the oil pivot. As we've discussed, replacing 600,000 barrels of Iranian crude with American oil is a death blow to the IRGC's payroll. But China is also coordinating with Saudi Arabia and Brazil to diversify further. Within 12 months, Iran's share of the Chinese market could drop from 17% to less than 5%. This is financial asphyxiation. Lever 2, the diplomatic veto withdrawal. For decades, Iran has used China's seat on the UN Security Council as a shield. Today's joint statement in Beijing suggests that the shield is being lowered. If the U.S. moves for a snapback of global sanctions, China may no longer stand in the way. This would trigger a total legal isolation of the Iranian banking system. Lever 3, the ultimate humiliation, naval escorts. There are intelligence reports emerging that China is considering deploying its own warships, Type 052D and Type 055 destroyers, to escort Chinese tankers through the strait. Think about the surgical irony of this. For years, the IRGC has claimed to be the guardians of the Persian Gulf. If a Chinese warship has to protect its own tankers from Iranian harassment, it is a public declaration that Iran is no longer a partner to China, but a nuisance. This would be a direct humiliation for the IRGC. It would show the Iranian people that their great Eastern ally trusts them so little that they have to bring their own guns to the neighborhood. While this squeeze is happening, the rest of the world is shifting its weight. Russia, distracted by its own bandwidth issues in Ukraine, has just launched its largest drone wave of the war, 1,560 drones in a single night. Most analysts see this as Putin's attempt to say, "Don't forget about me while you're making deals in Beijing." And India, sensing a shift in the global order, is preparing to test its Agni 6 ICBM. A 10,000-kilometer range missile with MIRV capability, multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. The world is modernizing, arming, and realigning. The unipolar moment is gone, replaced by a multipolar tinderbox. We are now entering the most critical 72-hour window of the 2026 crisis. China has flipped the script. The U.S. has secured its energy partnership. The IRGC is screaming into the wind with martyr commander drills. But a cornered mafia is a dangerous actor. The strategic earthquake in Beijing has left Iran with no clean exit. They can either surrender their nuclear ambitions and their shadow state economy, or they can try to break the world by escalating in the Strait of Hormuz. Will the IRGC commanders risk a total war to save their bank accounts? Or will the China flip finally force a collapse of the regime from within? I am Dr. Helen R. Baer. Stay informed, stay safe. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Is China genuinely abandoning Iran, or is this just a sophisticated move to lower oil prices? I read every single one of your insights. The game in the Strait of Hormuz will never be the same. Subscribe now, and I will see you in the next briefing. The sitrep is concluded.